Hey, welcome back to the Zombie Tactics channel. Today, sitting out at the pool, which might be your first clue that we're talking about water today as a part of the Food Prep for the Lazy, Late, and Cheap series. Well, water is a topic that's been on a lot of people's minds in the comments that I'm getting through private messages or email messages and comments in the videos themselves. Everybody wants to know, what do you add? You're not talking about water. You need water. You're going to die without water. You want to go back and watch the first parts of this series, especially the $20 72-hour food kit and the myth of 8x8 video for reference. Otherwise, you're not going to understand part of what I'm talking about in this video, and you're very likely to ask some silly questions which are answered in those videos, or worse yet, make some comments that will be embarrassing in light of what I've already established. So don't do that to yourself. Go watch the other videos first. So water. Well, we all know we need water, and if you watch the 72-hour food kit videos, you'll perhaps remember that I made note of the fact that there's quite a bit of water in those foods already. Referencing back to the myth of 8x8 video, we all get most of the water that we need from our food anyway, and that is very much the case in the 72-hour food kit. But let's assume for a minute that that's just not enough water, and let's talk about that for a bit. Well, right off the bat, if you do go and you buy some of these food kits that have like the little lemon or vanilla flavored food bar, it's like, 1,216 calories a day, you're not really getting enough food for most people. And they usually package with them these little 4-ounce foil or mylar packets of water. They're 4 ounces each, and you usually get 2 per day. And now they're using kind of more of a juice box type thing with an attached straw. Again, 8 ounces a day. So that's what they're calling a survival ration. 12 to 600 calories a day of water. 12 to 600 calories a day of food, 8 ounces of water. I suppose that'll get you by. Already in the 72-hour food kit, we know that we've got way more than the 2,000 calories per day suggested for an adult male to get by on, and a good mix of different kinds of foods for both psychological and as well as nutritional reasons. What might not be apparent is that there is already more than 8 ounces of water per day in those foods that are in those cans. So if all you did is just eat that food, you'd get more calories and more water than any of these emergency survival ration things that have the food bar and the water with them. So right off the bat, you're kind of set. But again, we want to not just survive, we want to thrive. Those food kits really don't give you what you'd need if you have to do heavy labor or a lot of walking, or if you live in a very hot climate or something like that. That 8 ounces of water isn't going to really do it for you, and that 12 to 1,600 calories isn't going to do it for you either. So the food kit handles the food part and part of the water part, but let's talk about water. Well, we're mostly talking about a scenario so far where you're probably bugging in the first few days of an emergency before you really have got clued in that, like, you may need to get out of there, you may need to do something different. Maybe you will be bugging in full time for whatever the nature of the emergency is. You'll probably find that your tap water is still working. If that's the case, go ahead and use it. It's probably fine for as long as it is working. I'd recommend that you go ahead and you fill up as many pitchers or jugs or glasses or whatever as you've got, as long as the water is working. And that may settle your entire water needs for 72 hours, just the water you can get out of the tap and what you've got in the 72-hour food kit. But let's just say that it isn't working. For some reason, maybe it's been an earthquake or a tornado or something like that. There are parts of the country where a tornado, if it took out power, the pumps that provide pressure to the water system where you live, all of a sudden there's no water pressure. Or perhaps there's a water main broken in some part of the country where your water is gravity fed and the pressure in your water lines comes from that. Either way, we're going to need some water. Well, let's just assume for a minute that we're going to put some water away. How much water are we going to put away? Well, we went over that in the 8x8 myth. You really don't need 8 ounces of water 8 times a day in order to survive. That's way too much water, particularly in line with the fact that we're already getting a lot of it from our food. But one thing you might not be aware of, you're probably aware of this, but you haven't really thought of it in this context, is if you go to your local grocery store, you're going to find the store brand of their flats of 16.9 ounce bottles of water. They're usually a flat of something like 24 and they're going to cost somewhere around $3. I've seen them for even less at Costco and Sam's Club and places like that, for a flat of 24 bottles, 16.9 ounces of water each. Well, it doesn't take a genius to realize that 16.9 ounces is over twice as much as 2 of the glasses in that 8x8 mitt that we talked about. So even if you wanted to get a full 8 glasses of water a day, you'd need 4 of those bottles, and you'd have far more than the 8x8 glasses of water that you'd need according to that kind of mythological idea of how much water you need. So if you just want to do that and you buy a flat of 24, guess what? 4 bottles. Wow, you've got a lot more water than you need for $3. As a matter of fact, you've got enough water for 2 people for 3 days for $3. So throw that flat of water up on the shelf. If it's just you, go through about half of it, and when you get through half of it, buy another one. And when you get through half of that one, buy another one. But again, I don't buy that 8x8 myth. So let's talk a little bit more sensibly, because people will bring to your attention the fact that, well, you use water for more things than just drinking. So let's assume that we get a good amount of our water from our food. We're not really assuming it. We know it, okay, from the food that I've suggested. Let's say that we're going to allocate for ourselves 4 of those 16.9 ounce bottles of water per day. 2 of them we're going to go ahead and just use as drinking water, and we're going to be just fine with that amount of water. 1 of them we're going to set aside for washing our hands or that kind of thing. And the bottle that's left, we're going to use half of that bottle, about a cup's worth of water, to cook the rice that's in the box of minute rice that I suggested in the 72-hour food kit. And the other half bottle, more than a cup of water that's left over, that's just fudge factor. We can use it for anything we want. We can use it for a little bit more cleaning. We can drink it if it's a hot day. And that's just 4 bottles out of a 24-bottle pack. So how many days worth of water does that give us? Just do the math. 4 bottles a day times 6 equals 24. So for one person, that's really closer to about a week's worth of water, or you've got, in actuality, you've got a 3-day supply for 2 people. And that's for $3. Now, let's assume that you don't do that and you find yourself in a bad situation. I want to give you some other advice along those lines as well. Even if you're lacking water pressure, even if you're lacking electricity, there's the strongest likelihood that you've got all kinds of sources of water that are going to be just fine for the short term. One of the most common sources that you'll be able to find is your actual water heater. You go into your closet, or if it's located out in your garage, check out how many gallons of water there are there. A gallon of water is 128 ounces. Do the math, and you'll find down there a valve where there is a place to hook a hose up to it. You want to make sure that whatever the heating element is turned off for a good amount of time, so that you don't scald yourself in getting the water out of there. But your water heater, just the water that's contained in that alone, is probably more than enough to get probably an entire family by for 3 days to a week. So that's one source of water you want to consider. Also, don't discount, if the plumbing's not working, that means you're not going to be able to flush the toilets. And don't flush the toilets if the plumbing's not working and you're not getting water. What you want to do is you want to go ahead and go not in the toilet bowl, but in the basin that where the water is pre-stored prior to flushing. And there's probably going to be a good amount of water in there, even if you've got one of these low-flow toilets that are now federally mandated. You've got a couple of liters of water there at least, ready to go. And in a standard house, you're going to have 2 or 3 bathrooms. That's clean water. That does not ever touch anything having to do with anything ugly. So you can just scoop the water right out of there, and that's plenty good to use as well for whatever purposes you want. So those are our short-term water solutions in the Food Prep for the Lazy, Late, and Cheap series. And I'll be back with you next time in this series with moving on our food prep into an intermediate and long-term storage and requirements that we'll need for that. Thanks for stopping by again today. That's Zombie Tactics. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.